You're watching Hip Hop Flash, where the biggest hip hop stories hit fast, raw, and unfiltered. Let's get into it. Now, the part Drake, the game, and half this industry should actually be worried about is not another diss record. It is that Kendrick Lamar already turned the last one into policy. When a rapper can take Like That to a #1, turn Not Like Us into a #1, then turn that same war into 5 Grammys, a surprise #1 album with GNX, and the most watched Super Bowl halftime show ever, while the Owl Camp is in court and West Coast veterans are still trying to find their place in the picture, that is not a normal rap win anymore. That is a transfer of power. And if you still think Kendrick's final warning was just one line aimed at Drake, you are missing the darker part of the story completely. Because this thing also reached guys like Snoop, Wayne, and yes, even The Game, the side quest general himself, in ways people still do not want to admit out loud. What makes this so uncomfortable is that the warning was not loud. It was calm. It was strategic. It was Kendrick proving he can go quiet and still make everybody else reveal themselves. One camp is making art, moments, and consensus. The other camp is making statements, spin, and paperwork. That is why this whole thing feels different now. And because we have so much to cover today, and trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming up, especially when we get to the Super Bowl line, the lawsuit angle, and what all of this really says about the people orbiting Drake and the people pretending they are above Kendrick's run. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. To really understand why this feels like a final warning, you have to stop looking at this like a normal beef timeline and start looking at it like a long takeover. Kendrick Lamar did not just appear, throw a couple of haymakers, and disappear into the hills. He picked a moment when the genre was already bloated, distracted, and overproduced. Then he exposed how fragile a lot of its biggest names looked once they had to stand inside a real cultural moment. Like That detonated in March 2024 and immediately changed the temperature. Billboard put it at #1. That was the first sign this was bigger than fan fiction. Then came the rest of the exchange, and by the time Not Like Us landed, the battle was no longer just about bars. It was about public trust, about charisma under pressure, and about who the culture still believes when things get ugly. Then Kendrick kept stacking the proof. Not Like Us debuted at #1 on the Hot 100. The pop-out in Inglewood became a giant public ritual, with Kendrick performing that record over and over like he was hammering a point into concrete. Then he surprise dropped GNX, and Billboard reported that album opened at #1 too. That matters a lot, because battle records are one thing, carrying the energy into a broader album moment is another. Then came the Grammys in early 2025, where Not Like Us cleaned up in both general field and rap categories, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year. After that, the Super Bowl halftime show happened, and Fox and the NFL said it drew 133.5 million viewers, the biggest halftime audience ever. So ask yourself something simple. How many rap feuds end with one side still performing from the center of American pop culture, while the other side is fighting over the paperwork? And that is why the stakes are way bigger than Stan Wars. For Kendrick, personally, this is legacy architecture. For Drake, the petition prince, this is not just about who took a loss on wax. It's about what happens when your aura of inevitability gets cracked in public. For the culture, this is a test of whether rap still rewards precision, timing, and authenticity, or whether the whole thing is just algorithms, playlist gravity, and media spin. And for the system around them, this became a nightmare question. What happens when one artist can still create an event so undeniable that labels, streamers, podcasters, and rival rappers all have to respond on his terms? That is what the final warning really sounds like. Not screaming, not crashing out, control. Let's start with the visible proof, because the visible proof is already devastating enough. Billboard logged Like That at number 1. Billboard logged Not Like Us at number 1. Billboard logged GNX at number 1. This is why the "it was just internet hype" angle has always sounded ridiculous. Hype does not carry itself through that many phases. Hype does not survive radio, streaming, club life, award voters, and a stadium stage. Hype burns hot and dies. This did the opposite. It got colder and more official. It moved from shock to structure. One guy made a moment. Kendrick made a chain of them. And then there was the pop-out, which might be the single clearest surface-level sign that the power really shifted. If you watched that concert, you saw more than a victory lap. You saw a city scene organizing itself around one center of gravity. Kendrick ran Not Like Us back multiple times, not because he had nothing else to do, but because repetition was part of the message. This was not just a song, it was a public stamp. And while that happened, social media immediately noticed who was there, who was not there, and who suddenly looked awkward. Fans spent days talking about West Coast unity, old alliances, and yes, why the game, the side quest general himself, was not a defining part of that picture. Even when absence is just absence, the culture reads it. That's what big moments do. And then GNX showed up and made the warning even wider. This is where a lot of people got exposed, because Kendrick was not just aiming at Drake. On whacked-out murals, he addressed the weirdness around Snoop posting Drake's AI-assisted tailor-made freestyle, and he also referenced the tension around Lil Wayne and the Super Bowl conversation. He even rapped that he won the Super Bowl slot and Nas was the only one who congratulated him. Think about how loaded that is. That's basically Kendrick saying, "I see the politics. I see who gets funny when the spotlight moves."
That is not the language of a man worried about losing the room. That is the language of a man walking through it with the lights on. And then came the Super Bowl line, the one that should have made the whole internet sit down for 10 minutes and breathe. I want to play their favorite song, but you know they love to sue. That was not just a joke. That was Kendrick taking a legal situation and turning it into mass entertainment in front of over 133 million people. Does everybody understand how crazy that actually is? Most artists spend their entire careers trying to get one moment that clean, that widely understood, and that cruel without looking forced. Kendrick did it with a smile. He had Serena Williams appear on that stage too, and the internet read every layer you'd think it read. Subtext was not hidden anymore, it was televised. And I think we need to set the record straight on what Drake is actually feeling about all of this right now. I am not pretending I can read that man's soul, but I do not need to. We can read actions. Fear in rap never walks into the room wearing a name tag that says fear. It shows up as legal escalation, narrative management, strategic silences, selective replies, and fans working overtime to convince you the thing you all saw with your own eyes somehow did not matter. That is why the Owl Camp's behavior has been louder than any statement. If Kendrick was truly irrelevant to Drake's position, why did this keep expanding beyond music? Why did it keep following him into every other arena? By early 2025, AP, Billboard, and Rolling Stone were all covering Drake's federal defamation suit against UMG over Not Like Us. Drake has denied Kendrick's allegations in the song, and the suit argues that UMG released and promoted false and defamatory content about him. UMG, for its part, blasted the case as meritless. That is public record. But in cultural terms, what does it mean? It means the petition prints moved the fight from the booth to the briefcase. It means this was no longer just, "I did not like the record." It became, "This record changed the environment around me enough that I need an institutional response." And once you do that, whether your legal team has a point or not, you have already told the world the song landed. This is why so many media people started sounding nervous, slippery, or weirdly overinvested. Every new Drake move got measured against Kendrick's last hit, last show, last lyric, last stare into the camera. Even when Drake came back with fresh music and tried to restore normal programming, the conversation kept bending toward Kendrick. Be honest, have we not seen this for months now? The internet can pretend to be exhausted with the beef, but then it immediately clicks every new Kendrick reference, every new lawsuit update, every new peer reaction. That is not exhaustion, that is magnetism. The culture may complain about him, but it still rotates around him. And we have to talk about the Game here, because he is a perfect symbol of the discomfort. The Game has real history, real catalog moments, and real West Coast credentials. Nobody has to erase that. But in this era, he is also moved like a man who wants to stay close to every major headline without actually controlling one. He has ties to Drake, old 100 history, his own gatekeeper energy, and that permanent look of somebody trying to keep one foot in yesterday's hierarchy and one foot in whatever today is doing. That is why I call him the side quest general. He's always near the conversation, never fully owning it. And when Kendrick's moments get this large, that in-between positioning starts to look less strategic and more desperate. And oh, do I have more for you. The stands are really not gonna like this one, because the most revealing part of Kendrick's warning is that it was not just aimed downward at an enemy, it was aimed sideways at peers, elders, and opportunists too. That is what GNX made clear. Kendrick basically said the industry's weird energy was noted, cataloged, and filed away. If you laughed with the wrong people, if you moved funny when the stage got assigned, if you played both sides because you thought the storm would pass, he saw it. And once an artist starts writing like that from a winning position, everybody around him gets nervous for a different reason. And speaking of which, it seems like one of those disses actually landed, because look at how many people suddenly had to explain themselves once the victory became official. Lil Wayne publicly expressed disappointment about not getting the New Orleans Super Bowl. That part was understandable, human even. But then Kendrick answered the broader weirdness on wax. Snoop had shared Drake's tailor-made at the time and later tried to laugh it off, and Kendrick still addressed that too. Why? Because once the dust settled, he wanted everybody to know the camera had been recording more than just Drake. The message was simple. If you acted like this was all a joke while he was taking real swings, he did not forget. That is why the everybody else is scared framing, while dramatic, actually has a real core to it. No, I'm not saying these artists are literally shaken under a table somewhere. I'm saying they have now seen what happens when Kendrick locks in and decides to make examples out of behavior, not just opponents. Wayne looked wounded by the politics. Snoop got publicly checked. The Game looked like another Coast voice without the final say. Media personalities looked exposed for chasing engagement over clarity, and Drake looked like the face of a bigger collapse, the moment when unbeatable commercial power runs into a rival who can still generate belief. That's the scary part, not the insult, the belief. And if you need a quick comedy break in the middle of all this seriousness, here it is. Watching some of these reactions has felt like watching grown men try to act casual after somebody read the group chat out loud at full volume. That's what this has been, a giant public scene notification. Suddenly everybody has a reason, an explanation, an understanding, and it was just love, and I was hacked, and it was the edibles, or y'all are reaching. Sure, of course, and I'm supposed to believe all of that happened.
By accident, while Kendrick just happened to keep stacking milestones? Come on, the clown makeup is showing. But stop for a second, because if you still think this story is only about who won the battle, you are already behind. This is where the real pattern interrupt hits. The warning Kendrick dropped was not, "I can write a better diss than you." We knew he could rap. The real warning was, "I can force the entire machine to expose how it works when its favorite outcome stops looking guaranteed." That is why this moves from entertainment to business so fast. Once Drake's side started raising questions about promotion, amplification, and liability, the conversation stopped being just art criticism. It became a window into the system that turns songs into accepted reality. Look at the business side closely. Before the federal defamation suit, Drake's camp had also filed pre-action legal petitions targeting UMG and iHeartMedia over the promotion of Not Like Us. Again, that is not a normal rap response. That is a challenge to the machinery. It raises questions about radio, streaming, marketing, and whether the environment around a record was organic or engineered. Now, let me be clear. Asking those questions does not automatically mean the claims are true. Allegations are not proof. But culturally, the move still matters because it shows the Owl Camp understood this had become a system problem for them, not just a song problem. And that is exactly why Kendrick's Super Bowl joke about people loving to sue hit so hard. He was shrinking a sprawling legal and industry dispute into one line the whole country could understand. That is elite messaging. It told casual viewers, hardcore fans, labels, and artists all the same thing at once. Your process, your panic, your paperwork, I see all of it, and I can still turn it into a punchline. One guy had the best lawyers money can buy. The other guy had the crowd. In rap history, which side usually ages better? Exactly. The petition prince may still have numbers, resources, and global reach, but the second your strongest counterpunch starts sounding administrative, you are telling on yourself. This is also why so much of the coverage around Kendrick has felt impossible to suppress. In a manufactured era, genuine consensus is rare. Streaming can be inflated by passive listening, media cycles can be engineered, playlist placement can do a lot of heavy lifting. But there is still one thing the machine cannot fake very well for long. A moment people actually care enough to argue about in public, offline, across demographics, for months. Kendrick built one, then another, then another. The machine did not create that. The machine had to react to it. That difference is everything. And once you see that, the whole system starts looking shaky. Because what does it say about the rest of the field if one artist can vanish for stretches, pop back up with focused work, and instantly make every release schedule, every podcast debate, and every fan coalition feel small? It says most of this game has been running on volume, not weight. It says a lot of careers have been cushioned by habit, not hunger. It says the media economy around rap is so addicted to outrage and star branding that when someone brings actual consequence back into the room, everybody either rushes to stand near it or rushes to explain it away. Manufactured, fabricated, engineered, pick your word. The grift gets exposed the moment a real event shows up. So here's the major truth bomb, and I really need you to hear this clearly. Kendrick's final warning was not to Drake alone. It was to the entire ecosystem that helped make Drake-style permanence feel untouchable. It was a warning to artists who thought clout could replace conviction, a warning to veterans who wanted respect without choosing a side when the room got uncomfortable, a warning to media people who treat every conflict like content until one side starts documenting them too. And most of all, it was a warning that the audience can still tell the difference between a rollout and a reckoning. That is what made all of this catastrophic for the people on the wrong side of it. Because once that difference becomes obvious, everybody's behavior gets reinterpreted. Drake's legal moves stop looking like confidence and start looking like damage control. The game's orbiting stops looking like elder statesman energy and starts looking like a relevance tax. Even certain peer reactions stop reading as neutral and start reading as politically cautious. Fear in this context is not trembling. It is repositioning. It is trying to leave yourself an exit. It is joking too hard, explaining too much, congratulating too late, or acting like the moment was not as big as Billboard, the Grammys, and the Super Bowl all just told you it was. That is why this has been so brutal. Kendrick did not just beat people, he reclassified them. And while all of that has been happening, what has Kendrick actually been doing? Winning without looking frantic. That is the part I respect most, and if you have been on this channel for a while, you know I have said for months that the real separator in rap is not talent alone. It is whether an artist can make disciplined choices under insane pressure. Kendrick has. He did not flood the market, he did not overtalk, he did not spend every week begging to steer the narrative back. He made records, built moments, took the stage, and let the consequences spread. Then he moved into a stadium run with SZA and kept the focus on execution. The right person is still winning, and he is doing it without acting thirsty. That is why I really believe this is only the start. Not because I think Kendrick is about to spend the next 5 years dissing everybody with a pulse, but because the standard he just reintroduced is going to haunt the whole genre. From here on out, every major release from a superstar will be measured against impact, not just streams. Every public alignment will get examined harder, every veteran comment will be read for subtext, every attempt to fabricate a moment is going to look flimsier now that people have seen what a real one looks like. Drake still has star power, the game still has name value, Plenty of other artists still have fan armies, but after this run, everybody knows those things are not the same as control. So when people say Kendrick just dropped a final warning, I think they are accidentally understating it. What he really dropped was a new rule book. He showed that one focused artist can still embarrass lazy media, expose split loyalties, force a megastar into institutional defense, and turn silence into suspense. That is why the room feels tense even when he's not talking. And that is why so many people, from the Owl Camp to the Side Quest General to all the I'm above the beef bystanders, have been moving like they know the walls got closer. Because they did. Let me know if you think this whole thing is finished or if we are still watching the aftershocks. And if you want the deeper breakdown on how Kendrick turned one battle into a year-long cultural occupation, why Drake's legal strategy may have changed his image more than any diss record did, and what the game's weird middle position says about West Coast politics right now, check out the next video on screen.